All right, guys, we're back. This time we're not going to be doing any moon swatches. We're going to be doing something a little bit different. I've got a subscriber who wanted me to build him a watch. And I know this watch has been built before, but I figure we'd give it a shot ourselves. Why not videotape it? Why not help some of my subscribers if they were thinking about building one too? So I have this package. I believe everything is in here. We're going to find out. I'm going to open it. This is going to be... if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be an AP sort of inspired case with a Seiko modded build. So it's going to have a Seiko movement. It's going to have a Seiko dial, etc. And let's get into it now. Let's open this up and find out what's in here, all right? It's like a sarcophagus, only better, because it's got watch parts in it, and we all like watch parts. All right, so let's pull these out, throw this away. All right, the first part is going to be, oh, I'm mistaken. This is going to be a VK63 movement. So we've got some familiarity with that before. Yeah, so this is a quartz movement. It's a chronograph configuration, and we're going to be installing this into the case. So this is the hands. We're gonna have to set hands, and to do that, I'll show you what, this is also the dial. So let's take a look at this dial and find out what we're looking at. It's gonna be what looks to be like a black dial with silver hands. All right, here's silver hands. I'm just gonna show these to you real quick. Yep, you're gonna have minute, hour, and then there should be 3 sub-dial hands, all in silver. And then the dial, wrapped very carefully in tissue. I'll just show that to you. That's nice. It's got like a waffle texture to it. So we're gonna install this onto the movement, and then we're gonna install the hands onto the posts. And that should be the bulk of it, really. And then we're gonna put it in the case. So let's find out what the case looks like, all right? That's going to be in this one. All right, this is the stainless strap specifically for that AP style case. And I'll throw some of these bags away. We don't need these. And here is the case. Now this case is going to be a little different because it's got the AP style, which is going to have a lot of screws. And I believe the movement possibly goes through the front. We're going to take a look and find out. I've never built one of these before. So we're gonna have to see. No, it's got a case back. The front is screwed on, but it's already pre-installed, and the back is not a screw down case back. It is a, well, not the traditional screw down. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mini screws that secure that back there. So this should be a pretty easy build. Let me get all the tools that we're gonna need, and we'll come circle back around, and I'll show you what we need and how we're gonna do it. All right. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use. Now, some of these are absolutely required. Some of them are not required. Some of them you can get by with just a cheaper version of it. Some of them you can get by with none of it. So I'm just going to cover it one by one. First and foremost, what I want to show you, and you've seen this in other videos, is my screwdriver set. This is a really great set. I got it on Amazon. Had really great success with it. It's very close to the Bergeon version of it. Just amazing. I'll send a link to this, or I'll put a link to this in the description if anybody's interested. But this just has all different size, all different size screwdrivers of all different millimeters, starting from a 0.6 all the way up to a 2 millimeters, and then there's a couple Phillips heads as well, which I rarely use. But what we're going to be using today is probably a 1.8, I think, almost exclusively. We have screws that go on the case back, and we also have screws that tie the band to the case itself. So we'll see. May need more than one, but I think we're just going to need the 1.8. So that's the screwdriver set. That's an absolute imperative. You don't need this fancy of one, but you definitely need some screwdrivers. I have this. This is going to be just to, it's a little air blower. It blows off little dust particles from the dial and then from inside the case. I would recommend these. These are very, very cheap, and it's almost, don't blow on it. You can put little spit particles in there, and you don't want that. So this is what you want. Like I said, $1 or $2. You can get them just really cheap. I forgot to mention, I have nitrile gloves on, but a lot of people like to use the finger cots. Unfortunately for me, the finger cots are just a little small for my fingers, so they cut off my circulation. I don't like using them, but you can use whatever you want. But this just keeps the oils and the grease that's on your fingertips, off of the watch. If you hear some humming in the background, I apologize. I'm 3D printing some things for my daughter, a dragon egg, if I'm not mistaken. Nevertheless, if you can hear that, that's what that is. So finger cots, some kind of protection to keep the grease and oils off of the movement and off the dial and things like that. Okay, now, when we're setting the dial, we're gonna need some hand setting tools. Now there's these, and there's also a tool like this where you can put the watch in there and push straight down. I prefer doing it by hand. I prefer using these. This is just my personal preference. These again are very cheap. They're not hard to find. So is this. This one is actually a really cheap one. But that plunger gets it straight vertical and pushes those hands on nice and straight. I don't know. It's personal preference. So you need something to set your hands with, and that's what those are for. Once your hands are set, you need something to not only size your stem, which we're going to go through, but also to cut the stem. So a pair of calipers, you can find these just about anywhere. Amazon, I get them at Harbor Freight. Super cheap, super handy for anything you need to do when it comes to custom watch building. So that, and then the actual nippers, as they're called, to cut that stem to the correct length. So that's for the stem. Same thing with a needle nose. I like to hold the stem itself while I'm cutting it, and that's what these are for. You can get away without this. I just prefer having a good handle on it as I'm cutting them, so you'll see that. All right, so finally, I have just a pad. It lets you work in an elevated position, keeps things nice and clean, and it raises it a little closer to your face when you're working. Again, not necessary, but super cheap and super handy when you're building watches. So that brings us to the final thing. When I'm holding movements, I like to use a movement holder. You can just lightly cinch it onto there, and that will prevent it from sliding around a little bit. It gives it a little more grabbability when you're working on it in fine detail. So again, also super cheap. None of these tools are expensive. They're all very affordable, super easy for even an amateur to do. So, all right, let's get started. We have all of our parts. Again, the dial, and this is one more tool. It's just a dial holder. It keeps it from moving around, keeps it elevated and anything from touching the face of it. This is a super cheap version of a more expensive one you can buy, but it works and it works fine. Okay, I'll try to leave links to some of these tools in the description in case anybody's interested. All right, let's get started. First and foremost, I want to make sure that this is not, looks like this is not in a position I want it to be. I want this not to be pressing down on the pushers. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees in the movement holder and see if I can get a better grab on it so that I'm not affecting any of the moving parts on this thing. So, all right. All I have to remember is that this hole here is going to be at the 3 o'clock. So when I'm working on this movement, I'm going to be working on it 12 o'clock in the north position and 6 o'clock towards me. Okay, so first and foremost, now this movement, this is the VK63 movement. Now this movement is made by Seiko, but it's branded as a TMI. TMI is the factory that Seiko has to build movements that don't go in Seikos. So it's essentially a Seiko movement. It just doesn't say Seiko on it. But it's a VK, is V as in Victor, K as in Kilo, 6.3 movement. And they're relatively inexpensive. I think these are like $15 to $20 if you needed to replace one or if you damaged it or anyway. It's super affordable as far as movements are concerned. So we're gonna put the dial on it, but this movement, it does not have, a lot of dials have, and this one does have it, but a lot of dials have these little posts, right? And these posts go into slots that are in the movement, and those slots sometimes have screws that tighten down on them coming from the side. This I don't believe does. This one is a press fit. It just goes into a a plastic movement ring around it, and that the movement ring is just a 0.1 millimeter smaller than the actual post, and so they press fit into there. This one looks like it is, let's see if you can see that, it looks a little bent. So that's another thing that this set of pliers is good for, is just to grab it very gently and straighten them very, very gently. You don't want to put too much pressure on these. This one's a little bit bent too, because if you do, you could end up breaking these feet off. They're just tack welded on very, very lightly. As a matter of fact, a lot of times in some of my builds, I've actually removed them by just twisting them back and forth 3 times. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to remove them, but bear that in mind when you're trying to straighten them. All right. So, like I said, this is going to be our 3 o'clock position. So we want to set our movement, our dial down on our movement that sort of way. Again, those feet are going to set into these little holes that are in the case. I don't know if you can see that. There's a couple different holes. You have to kind of gauge which ones you're going to use. I believe it's this one, and it's going to be... No, that's not it. It's going to be this one, and it's going to be that one. I'm doing this a little close to the camera so that you can see it. But what I'm doing is I'm looking at the side and I'm putting that into the slot. You have to use a little bit, you have to make sure that those feet are straight, which they don't appear to be. So let me straighten these up just a little bit more. Yeah, it looks like they're bent inward just a bit. So I'm just going to bend that outward just a smidge, and then this one too. You want to be very careful not to do those too much because they will break off. All right, back to where we were. 3 o'clock. All right, now the feet basically are in the little slots that they're supposed to be in. That one's in that one, and that one's in that one. And now I want to make sure that your center is lined up. I'm not lined up myself. I want to make sure that's perfectly centered and that your date window is lining up before you press down on this. Because if you don't, you want to press down right on the posts themselves. There we go. Once you do that, you want to make sure that it's flush all the way around. See how that's flush with the movement? And all of your little hands, or all of your little stems for the subdials are coming through at the right places, which they are. Super easy. Not too hard of a thing to do. So now that that's in place, put that aside. We don't need that anymore. Now we're going to move on to our hands. We have basically 5 hands. We have, 6 hands. We have 3 subdials, which are really small ones, and we have obviously an hour hand, a minute hand, and a second hand, which isn't the second hand per se on this movement. It's more of the stopwatch counter, but we're going to call it a second hand just for the sake of argument. All right. So this is going to take some time. I'm going to reposition the camera so you can look at it from an angle. That way you can see what I'm doing better. But let's get at that now. Okay, we're back. I've got a few different camera angles here. We'll flip back and forth between them depending on what we can see. So basically we're going to put the hands on. I've taken the gloves off just because I'm not going to be touching this very much, and I want the dexterity of having fingers and not gloves between them. So just bear that in mind. Also, another tool that I didn't cover in the beginning, and that is that this is called Rodico, and it's basically the watchmaker's silly putty. And what I do with it, I just take a small piece of it, I roll it into a teardrop shape, and that's going to allow me to grab these small little hands and allow me to manipulate them in any direction I want, left, right, without actually touching the hand or using a tweezer to potentially mar them or scratch them or whatever. So this is very handy in what we're doing. Okay, that being said, let's get to work and put these hands on. I also didn't mention that I use a set of magnifying glasses. These are 3.75 power. You can get them, I think, up to 4.5 or 5. There's all kinds of ways you can get in close to your work, but these are what work best for me because you can just wear them like glasses, and it's super easy, super convenient. So always be able to get into your work close by whatever means you feel necessary, because these have holes. The actual hand on the subdial hands are, and you can't see that because it's not focused, but they're about, the hole itself is about, let me see if I can get a good angle at this. It's about 0.9 millimeters in diameter, which is absolutely tiny. And you're trying to line that up with a post on the movement that's the same diameter. Anyway, it's difficult. It is very difficult, and any little bit helps. So I use magnifying glasses. So also, what we're going to do to start with is, since this has a date window, we want to make sure that this is set at exactly midnight as we start to put hands on, because all that's going to be critical. As it hits midnight, we want that dial or that date to click into place for the next date, and it has to happen at midnight. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put it in this time setting position, and we're just going to rotate it. We're going to go, what that's doing, and you can't see it, but it's actually rotating your little gear sets in there that change your minutes and your hours. And as we rotate it around, we just wait for that date to click over. There you go. You can see it right about now, about to set. It's going to click into position, and as soon as it does, that is going to be our midnight. There we go. So that's now set at midnight, even though the hands aren't there to show you. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start by setting the subdial hands. These are the most difficult and take the most time. I want to set these at straight up positions. Oh, one more thing. Since this is a chronograph, I want to make sure that the chronograph is set at 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to click, this is the time reset, this is the reset button on your chronograph. So we're going to want to make sure we press that. And I don't hear it click, so that means that it's in. But if you had this set anywhere, but see, I just clicked on the stopwatch, and then I'm going to stop the stopwatch. And then when I click this button, you're going to hear that click. That's that spinning it back to the midnight. So we know that it's at midnight now, or the 12 o'clock rather. So that stopwatch is in the right place. Your time is in the set place. Now we can start setting hands. Some watches you won't have this problem with, but this VK63, you definitely will, because it does have a stopwatch and it does have a date window. All right, let's get in and see what we can do here. I'm going to use my time setting tool, or my hand setting tool, that has a very, very small hole, because we don't need a big hole for this one. We want to also make sure that we're setting this hand with the proper side down, and I'm not going to be able to see that well. There we go. So we want to make sure we put it in the right place. This is going to take a little bit of effort. These are very small and very difficult to set, so I may cut ahead. Okay, now that's exactly where it needs to be, at the 12 o'clock position of that subdial. It's pushed in and pressed onto the post. All right, we're moving on to the second hand, or rather the second subdial hand. because the actual second hand is down here. We're going to do that last. You probably noticed me using this little piece of pegwood here. I didn't mention that in the tool set when we first started, but I like using just a little piece of pegwood that's got a pointed end on it. It's soft, it's not going to hurt anything, but it's also gets you into those little tight spaces a little bit better. Okay, both subdials are set now for the second hand. This is the one that's going to be, basically this is your seconds on this particular movement. And okay, so once your hand is set, your second hand is set, you want to make sure it does a full rotation without binding, without resisting, without hitting anything. Sometimes you can press them on too far and it's touching the dial, and then it will have a restriction and it won't go the full rotation. So you just want to make sure that it's at the right height, that it's parallel with the dial, and that it's making a full rotation without binding. Okay, a full minute's gone by. Everything looks good. Now we get to pull the stem out again. That stops the watch. It's called a hacking movement. And we're going to rotate it a full rotation again to make sure that date is clicking over at exactly midnight again. I'm doing that because we let this thing run a few minutes, so it's actually a few minutes past midnight now. We want to be exactly at midnight when we set that minute hand and the hour hand at noon, or midnight rather. And right about there. So we're just a smidge beyond midnight there. I'm just going to put it at midnight here so it matches up. And then obviously we're all the way pulled out, so the watch is not running. So now we can set our hour hand and our minute hands. Get that radico back out again into a teardrop shape, just so it's a little more pointy. Here we have the hour hand. Get that nice and straight and press that on straight down, and the minute hand. Okay, now we're checking again just to make sure that that second, or the hour hand and the minute hand are parallel to each other and parallel to the dial, and that the minute hand is pressed onto the post at the right level, which it all looks like it is here. It all looks like it's at the right distance. So we're just a little bit past midnight, but that's okay. We're not looking for precision here. So now we're at midnight again. As within a few minutes is always fine. All right, now we're going to put the second hand on, which is not the second hand. It's the stopwatch, the stopwatch counter. On some movements, this has some adjustability, some calibration within the movement. You can pull it out one click and press the top button or the bottom button to calibrate that. But unfortunately, the VK63 does not have that feature built in. So every time I put this thing into the correct position, there's some grooves within the post or the hand that refused. See, I'm actually, if you can see this now, I'm actually to the left of center, but as soon as I press this down, it's going to pop over to just right of center, and there's no way, yeah, see, there's just no way for me. It's an imperfection in either the post or the second hand, where it just refuses to let me put it centered. So it's just going to have to be what it is. Press that down. And we'll just have to go with that. Now we're going to test this thing. We're going to Now, the VK63, as I may have mentioned before, it does not have the ability to calibrate these. On the PE50 movement of a moon swatch, or even the G10 of the actual genuine moon swatch, I'm sorry, the PE50 is the replica, those both have calibrations where if you pull this out 1 or 2 slots and then press the top and bottom buttons, you can actually calibrate those to be in the proper positions. This doesn't have that feature. The VK63 doesn't. So you have to set those hands perfect from the setting or it just won't work. All right, so I'm going to go and I'm going to reset it to make sure things don't. Yeah, it's always setting back just right of center. There's just no way to prevent that. I guess what you could do, anybody in the future that owns this watch, the new owner, if you really are OCD about it, you can have it, you can stop the watch at the correct position, and then it'll just be there forever. I actually like to wear my watches with the second hand a little off, like somewhere maybe in the 7:30 position, just because it doesn't block the logo then. I don't understand why manufacturers do that. The second hand, that stopwatch hand blocks the manufacturer when you do it at 12 o'clock. So you don't get to see that it's an Omega or, you know, a Pagani design or whatever it may happens to be. It blocks that logo. So in any case, I think that's about as good as we're going to get. Nevertheless, everything seems to be going around and not binding. Or do a full rotation just to check it again. You can see the 24-hour subdial is lined up and it's working properly at noon. It is at the noon position. And as we do a full rotation, it's going to do the same thing again. Go to midnight. And hopefully the date clicks over at approximately the right time. Right there, it just clicked over, maybe 10 minutes before midnight. So that's all we can hope for. Now, I will add, I was able to acquire these, and I could put a Seiko logo on this. You can find these out and about. Either that's not a Seiko 5, but this is just going to be a regular Seiko. But the customer wanted to keep this dial sterile, as they call it, and so that's what we're going to do. But if I was going to do this, if I was going to place these decals, I would do it before I set the hands, just because it's easier, and then you can make sure that the hands are not binding with it or in any way before you do that. So, but I'm not doing that. We're just going to go with sterile or naked, as they say. So let's put this in the case. Now we're going to put this thing on the pad, and we're going to take the case for the movement, and we're going to prep it a little bit. We're going to prep both of these things. So first, what I mean by prep is cleaning, and we want to make sure there's no dirt, specks of anything, smudges, whatever on the inside of that. We're also going to want to make sure that the dial is clean. Most of the time you can do that with an air blower. If you can't, a piece of that Rodico is helpful in dabbing it, and you can get little pieces of stuck-on things with that Rodico, and it doesn't affect the dial at all. So this looks clean. We're going to clean the inside of this case with a cleaning cloth. Most watch that you buy comes with a cleaning cloth, and I'm not doing this on frame. I actually want to make sure I don't do this over the top of the movement because we just cleaned that, and any dirt that I knock out of here is going to fall on that, which we don't want. So, all right, we want to do top and bottom, and then all right, sometimes cleaning this case can take a little work. Depending on your level of perfection that you're desiring, it can take a minute. Sometimes there's smudges or there's things stuck onto that crystal, and it is just a work to do it. So I think I've got this as clean as I can hope for. I've looked at it up against the light, and it seems like it's pretty clean. So next step is going to double check our dial, make sure that's clean as well. It looks like there's a piece of dust on there that fell on there, which is why we check it again. And then we're going to set this thing into the movement, which I do by putting this on the pad And the reason for that pad is I'm going to show you in a second. There's a piece of dust on there. You're going to go in like this. This is also the moment, it's kind of like the final reveal where you kind of see it all come together and what it's going to look like. This one looks pretty amazing if you ask me. And then you just flip it over. So once it's in there, you flip it over and then you put your movement ring in. This movement ring comes supplied with the case for this specific movement. And we're going to do that. Actually, before I do that, because it helps, I'm going to put my stem in and click that into place because that's going to help me keep this thing centered. It's also going to help me maneuver it around if I need to. There we go. And all right, so let's go and put this. Sometimes a little screwdriver can help you put these little tabs in, get this thing fully seated. All right, you'll know when it's fully seated, you'll be able to feel that. We're not going to put the case back on yet, although we might, just to keep it from moving around at all, because what we want to do now is we want to measure that stem. We're a little off here too, just a little bit off center. And we can use this, we can just twist this like this. You can see that. So I'm twisting. And there we go. Now it's nice and centered. See how that's centered in the spot? So now what we're going to do is we're going to take those calipers that we talked about earlier. We're going to push this all the way down. And we're going to find out what the distance between the case and the back of that crown is as it's smashed down. Because once we screw that down, once we screw this into the case, that's where we want it to sit. And that's going to be minus the dimension that exists now. So that dimension is going to be 2.7, let's say 2.7 millimeters. So that's essentially where we're going to cut off that stem. So as you remember, we're going to put this in the fully in position. We're going to stick this into that hole like so, press down, and then that stem comes right out. We're going to take this, and this is what I like using my pliers. I like grab onto it here. We're going to unscrew this. I also want to mention that when you're taking the measurement that we just did, we want to make sure that this is screwed, the crown is screwed all the way in. Oh, we don't need these gloves anymore either. We're not going to be touching the movement anymore, so. All right, we want to make sure that this is screwed all the way in, all the way, so that it is getting an accurate measurement, because when we put this thing in final, that's what's going to happen. All right, so if you remember, we're taking off 2.7 millimeters. So what I like to do first of all is I like to measure the overall measurement of this. The overall measurement of this right now is 19.7. So essentially we want to make that 17 millimeters when we get done cutting this. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 2.7 millimeters. 0.78, 2.68, close enough. We're going to put that right there. And we're going to take a Sharpie and we're going to mark where we're going to be cutting. So that's now 2.7 millimeters, that mark is there. We're going to take our nippers, and remember I like holding these just to make sure they're secure, and we're going to cut that at 2.7. Make sure you wear eye protection. We're going to see how close to 16 we are at this point. I'm sorry, 17. I said 16. So we're at 16.98, which is pretty darn close, if not perfect. So we're at the right spot. We're going to screw this on. Now, some people like to put a little blue Loctite on these, and you're welcome to do that. I find that most of the time they don't come unscrewed without it. So okay. Now we'll put that back in. We'll check it, make sure it screws down perfect. And then we're going to now put the case back on. Now this case back is a little more difficult than most. This has screw backs, screws that put it back. Most of them you just screw the crown back in. Most of them you just screw the case back and tighten it with a ball like this. This one is unique. It's more AP design with screws, and it has a gasket built in. You can see the gasket right. I don't have my pointer tool, so we'll just use the file. There's a gasket right there. So we're going to put this, so if you notice 12 o'clock is this way, and this doesn't have any writing on it, so it's not really relevant, but you want to check to make sure there's no markings or anything on here that would make it point in a certain direction. This one doesn't seem to. It seems like it's a perfect octagon, and it just goes any way you want it. So that's what we're going to do. We'll just put it into place, and we'll screw it down. All right, so let's put these screws in. Just like when we're putting a wheel on a car, we want to do it in a star pattern. We don't want to just screw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That way it all goes down nice and straight and level. And even on the first two, I'm only going to screw them down maybe halfway. And then I'll go back and I'll do the final when they're all in place. There we go. Just do a final check on that last one. The first one we did, it's still tight. Looks like we missed one here. Anyway, you just want to go around in a circle, make sure you got them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. They're all nice and tight. And you can confirm, make sure your case is lined up on the sides. Make sure all sides are nice and flush with the back of the case. And then you're pretty much done. Except for, of course, the band, which this band has 4 screws that hold it in. Sometimes you'll have a pin. Most of them have a pin, but this case style has a, and it looks like it's a butterfly. Sorry, I'm not in frame here. Looks like it's a butterfly. Let me back out again. There we go. So this case is going to have a butterfly, so it doesn't really matter which way it goes. It can go this way or it can go this way. But some cases you want to make sure that it's, or some bracelets, you want to make sure you're putting it in the correct orientation so that when you put it on your wrist, you're pulling it towards you or away from you, whatever you prefer. But make sure you are cognizant of that issue. All right, let's put this band on and then we'll wrap this build up. Okay, we're back. I was unable to really film this process because I ran into some complications. As you can see, the band is put on, and I used a 1.6 millimeter straight slot to screw these 4 pins in 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So, but in doing that, I discovered that the holes in the band here and here that these pins travel through, the holes were not far enough, they weren't far enough this way to allow that pin to go straight in. The pin was actually more like this. So what I ended up having to do is I needed to take a drill to both the holes here, and of course on the opposite side. And I just widened them a bit, maybe by 0.4 millimeters. And that allowed that screw to kind of raise up like this more and go in. So it was a little difficult to capture that on video, and I wasn't able to get it. So I apologize for that. But in the end, the band is on, and you can see the final result of the watch here. Again, this is a butterfly clasp, so it opens like this. And the overall build of this, you know, it's Chinesium, and that's one of the reasons why this didn't line up. The quality control on these things is hit or miss. But in the end, I mean, the case looks nice. It feels nice. It's a good weight. It's hefty. You know, my friend or friend of mine has an original AP, and it's a hefty watch as well. So I wouldn't say that this is as hefty as his, but it is a nice heavy watch, and it does feel like it feels like mineral glass. You can hear that tinking noise. Usually, if it's sapphire, it's more of a thunk. So I don't know the specs on this case. I don't have any links to it. Like I said, my customer who had me build this for him, he bought it all and sent it to me. But here's the result, and I'll put it on my wrist. We can see what it looks like. This is not sized to my wrist as it wouldn't be, because it's not my watch, but it'll give you a general idea as to what this thing looks like on your wrist, just like an AP would, I would assume. In a lot of ways, this probably matches the specs of that pretty well. So as you can see, it's a nice looking watch. And if you wanted to build your own, I'd say that this difficulty level is pretty high. Getting those hands on properly is a chore. It's not an easy thing to do. So I wouldn't recommend this for a beginner. But you know, if you want to take on a little challenge, by all means, grab yourself these components and do it yourself. I always encourage that. I always encourage people to get their hands dirty, you know, build a watch. You'll love it. It's going to tell a story. You know, you could say, hey, I built this watch, you know, and you'll learn something. So there we go. Don't forget, you know, like and subscribe. I always appreciate you guys. Any comments, any questions, or any, you know, opinions you have on this, let me know. Put it in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you. I'm pretty busy, but, you know, I like to get back with as many of you as I can. So let me know, and I will see you on the next one. All right, thanks.